Usually, when we track a successful day, there's this expectation of just clean completion.
Right, like a perfect checklist.
Exactly. You write down the task, you do the task, you draw that deeply satisfying line right through it, and you move on.
Yeah.
We want our productivity to be, like, visible. We want the before and the after to be neatly defined.
Well, it becomes a binary, right? Checked or unchecked.
Yes.
There is a lot of psychological comfort
Yeah.
in that level of predictable efficiency, especially when the path between starting and finishing is just, mapped out perfectly.
But then you step away from the spreadsheets and all the productivity hacks, and you step into something completely organic.
Oh, and it all falls apart.
Completely shatters. Suddenly, that whole checklist mentality just doesn't work. You find yourself staring at a landscape of effort that is messy. And, I mean, by modern standards, it is deeply inefficient.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today.
Right. Today's deep dive is about that exact friction. We are looking at a really fascinating source today. It's a single, brief, personal journal entry from a writer named Eng.
Yeah.
It's dated April 17th, 2026, and the title is, let me see, Notes on Gardening, Part 869, The Therapy of the Gardening Chores.
And it is a very short entry. I mean, it mainly just details an evening spent repotting some plants.
Yeah, super mundane on the surface.
Exactly. Yet the mechanics of human satisfaction hidden inside those few paragraphs are incredibly dense.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore how a mundane, long-pending chore, just moving some dirt around, spiraled into this massive side quest, and how it somehow unlocked a profound realization about where we actually find meaning and therapy in our daily routines.
It's a great journey.
It really is. So to understand the psychological shift that happens here, we first have to look at the physical reality that triggered the whole event in the first place.
The catalyst.
Right. Eng notes that the rainy season has just started. That change in the weather is what forces the action. And out in the garden, there is a very specific problem going on.
Yeah, the seedlings.
Right. Seedlings from 3 specific plant species have completely overgrown their little starter trays.
Well, because the physical space can simply no longer contain the biological reality of those plants.
Yeah.
The root systems are tangling, they're competing for limited nutrients, they're suffocating each other, essentially.
I was reading this and I immediately thought about teenagers.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, you know when a kid hits that massive growth spurt around, like, 14?
Oh, yeah. Overnight, they're suddenly huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they are knocking over lamps, their knees are hitting the underside of the dining table, they are seemingly taking up all the oxygen in a shared bedroom.
Just entirely disproportionate to the space.
Right. You just look at them and think, we desperately need to get you your own room before you destroy the house.
That is exactly what these seedlings are doing.
Yeah, they are elbowing each other in these tiny, cramped communal trays, just begging for their own individual pots.
And what's interesting is how we often try to force our lives into artificial mechanical time blocks on a calendar.
Right, like scheduling a meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those seedlings and that incoming rainy season, they operate on biological and meteorological time.
They don't care about your calendar.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The environment is acting as this silent, undeniable alarm clock. When a plant becomes root-bound, it enters a state of biological stress. It stops growing and starts surviving.
Oh, wow.
So Eng isn't just, checking a box on a chore list. They are responding to living things that are actively insisting on their own continuation. The task is totally inevitable because nature doesn't respect our scheduling conflicts.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Eng acknowledges the necessity of the task. The 3 species of teenager plants, they need their own rooms.
Right.
And the journal explicitly states that, compared to Eng's usual volume of gardening, this is actually a really small batch.
Yeah, just a few selected seedlings.
Right, just a few. So mathematically, you scoop the dirt, you drop the plant in, you add water. We are looking at, what, a 20-minute job?
Tops. If you're being really careful, maybe 30.
But Eng writes that this whole process ended up taking an astonishing 4 hours.
Which is wild. 4 hours for a handful of small plants.
And the entry explains why. Eng took the opportunity to start decluttering old containers from all these various different gardening areas.
Ah, yes.
It is the classic side quest trap.
It really is.
It's like when you go into your hall closet just to grab a specific winter coat.
Oh, I know this feeling.
Right. You don't intend to stay. But somehow, 3 hours later, you are sitting on the floor surrounded by mismatched gloves, old umbrellas, and you've completely reorganized your entire family's wardrobe by color and season.
And you still haven't put the coat on.
Exactly. You completely lose the plot of the original 20-minute task.
But here's the thing. The brain is doing something highly functional in that moment, even if it looks like procrastination or just getting distracted.
Wait, really? It's functional.
Absolutely.
Right.
We have to look at the cognitive load of physical clutter.
Okay.
When Aang walks out there to pot new seedlings, those old, unused containers from past seasons aren't just taking up physical space on a shelf. The visual cortex processes that clutter as unfinished business.
So it takes up mental bandwidth just by sitting there.
Precisely. In cognitive psychology, it's related to the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, it's the tendency for us to remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. So every empty pot from a failed tomato plant or an old harvest is a subtle subconscious pull on working memory. It's just draining energy.
Wow.
By spending hours clearing out those old containers alongside potting the new seedlings, Aang is performing a necessary neurological reset.
Huh.
The brain literally demands that the visual noise of the past be cleared away so it can fully allocate its attention to the delicate new life right in front of it.
So it's not wasting time.
Not at all. Those 4 hours weren't a failure of time management. They were a prerequisite for focus.
I really like that. The idea that clearing the physical decks is basically required to clear the mental decks.
Exactly.
And clearly, Aang wasn't bothered by the timeline, like, at all. In fact, those 4 hours of deep cleaning and dirt moving lead directly to the core realization of the whole journal entry.
The real aha moment.
Yes. Aang writes point blank that if you ask them what the most satisfying part of gardening is, it's this: the sowing of the seeds and the transplanting of the seedlings.
Which is surprising to a lot of people.
Right, because Aang explicitly states it is not the end result, and it is not seeing the plant at its full optimal bloom.
And that statement fundamentally challenges the dopamine structures most of us operate under daily.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I am going to push back on Aang's philosophy here a little bit.
Let's hear it.
From a purely logical, utilitarian standpoint, isn't the entire point of gardening to get to the end?
That's the common assumption, sure.
I mean, if I plant a tomato seed, I am doing it because I eventually want a ripe tomato. If I plant a rose bush, I want the beautiful flowers.
You want the reward.
Right. If I just get dirty hands and no tomatoes, haven't I wasted my time? Why would the messy in-between stage, the part where nothing is blooming, the part that is basically just manual labor, be the best part?
What's fascinating here is the distinction between consummatory dopamine and anticipatory or process-driven dopamine.
Okay, break that down for me.
So modern society conditions us to crave the consummatory hit.
Yeah.
We want the tomato. We want the photo of the beautiful flower to post online.
Right, the final product.
Exactly. We want the finished product. But consuming a final product triggers a very fleeting neurochemical spike.
Fleeting, like it doesn't last.
Barely at all. You eat a tomato, it's gone. The flower blooms, and days later, it wilts. The checklist is marked done, and the satisfaction evaporates almost instantly.
And then you're just left looking for the next task.
Yeah, right back to baseline, hungry for the next product. A process, however, sustains you. When Aang says the real satisfaction is in the transplanting, we have to look at the neuroscience of manual tasks.
Working with your hands.
Right. Untangling the delicate roots of a seedling requires just enough spatial awareness and fine motor skill to occupy the brain's working memory.
It takes focus, but not like stressful focus.
Exactly. And doing that forces the brain to quiet the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN. Remind me, that's the part of the brain that generates our internal monologue, right?
Yes, it's where we ruminate on the past and anxiously project into the future. It's the worry center, essentially.
Oh, I spend a lot of time in my DMN.
We all do. But when your hands are covered in dirt, making immediate tactile adjustments to keep a tiny plant intact, your brain literally cannot spare the computing power to worry about tomorrow's inbox.
That is so true. You have to be right there.
You are pulled entirely into the present moment. It induces a flow state. The potential of the seedling, the fact that it hasn't bloomed yet, means the brain is continuously engaged in the act of cultivation rather than just waiting to consume. That engaged process is vastly more rewarding and psychologically durable than the brief spike of simply having a finished product.
So the manual labor is actually the mechanism that silences the anxiety.
Exactly.
But Aang doesn't just leave this as some abstract philosophy about dirt and roots. The entry details the specific environmental ingredients that made this 4-hour session so deeply therapeutic.
The setting is very important here.
It is. Aang paints this incredibly vivid scene. It's happening during the serenity of a breezy, cool night.
That's lovely.
Yeah, but crucially, this solitary, peaceful feeling of being alone with the plants is actively combined with bits of decluttering and, quote, small talk with the neighbors.
Which is a very deliberate curation of sensory input.
And it sounds contradictory at first glance.
How so?
Well, how can someone experience deep restorative serenity while stopping to make small talk over the fence?
Ah, I see what you mean.
It reminds me of why so many of us haul our laptops to a busy coffee shop when we need to really focus on a project.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. You go there because you want an isolated bubble. You don't want to engage in a deep, demanding conversation with anyone.
Definitely not.
But sitting alone in a totally silent, empty room in your house can feel, I don't know, oppressive.
Yeah, too quiet.
You crave the low-stakes hum of the community. You want the espresso machine grinding, the murmur of the people at the next table. It anchors you to the task somehow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are describing the psychological phenomenon of ambient social presence combined with sensory gating.
Ambient social presence. I like that.
Total isolation is actually quite unnatural for the human nervous system. Evolutionarily speaking, if you are completely alone in a silent environment, your brain often shifts into a hypervigilant state.
Really?
Yeah, it starts listening for threats. It feeds anxiety.
Because silence used to mean danger, like a predator was near.
Exactly. On the other end of the spectrum, deep, demanding social interaction drains your cognitive battery. You have to actively listen, read facial expressions, formulate thoughtful responses.
It's exhausting.
It is. So what Ang is describing in the garden is the biological sweet spot for nervous system regulation.
The middle ground.
Right. The physical task of transplanting keeps the active mind occupied. The cool breeze provides a steady, soothing physical sensation.
And the neighbors provide the ambient social presence.
Yes. The small talk is absolutely crucial. It is connection without demand. Exchanging a few pleasantries over the fence signals to the primal brain that the tribe is awake, the environment is safe, and there are no immediate threats.
That is fascinating.
The brain registers the background hum as safety, which paradoxically allows the frontal lobe to relax its vigilance and dive deeper into the solitary focus of repotting the plants.
Oh, I love that.
Ang has engineered an environment that offers the comfort of community without the cognitive tax of socialization.
Connection without demand. It's almost like the social equivalent of the plants themselves, just gently existing in the same shared soil.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
But establishing that sweet spot, that bubble of solitary focus mixed with safe, ambient community, it requires a physical boundary.
It does.
And at the very end of the journal entry, Ang shifts focus away from the plants and the neighbors and looks at the structure itself.
The container that holds the entire experience.
Yes. Ang writes, "The garage is truly a man cave or she shed for anyone who needs a workspace or a gardening area where they can focus and indulge in something they love." So what does this all mean? How does taking a standard garage, which is basically a concrete box built for parking cars and storing like half-empty paint cans, how does slapping a label like she shed or workspace on it completely alter the psychological weight and reality of the room?
This raises an important question about environmental psychology and spatial anchoring.
Spatial anchoring.
Yeah. A garage, in its default state, is purely utilitarian. It is a space of transit. You pass through it to get from the outside world into your house.
Right. Or it's a graveyard for boxes you don't want to deal with.
Exactly. It holds absolutely no emotional resonance.
It's just square footage.
But the human brain relies heavily on context-dependent memory networks. When Ang explicitly declares that space, a man cave, a she shed, or a dedicated workspace, a profound cognitive shift occurs.
Just by naming it.
Just by naming it and dedicating it. They're drawing an invisible boundary and establishing a new set of rules for that specific geometry. By dedicating the space to indulgence and focus, Ang changes how the brain behaves the moment the threshold is crossed.
It's like flipping a switch as soon as you walk in.
Because the environment acts as a trigger. Over time, simply stepping into that dedicated workspace signals the nervous system to drop its guard.
Yeah.
It tells that default mode network we talked about earlier to just quiet down.
Wow.
The garage ceases to be a place of transit and becomes a true sanctuary. We all need spaces where our primary identity is severed from our productivity, our careers, or our obligations.
Place to just exist.
A space where we're allowed to just be the person who tinkers, the person who moves dirt around. By claiming that physical space, Ang is actively building a fortress for their mental well-being.
That makes so much sense.
The concrete walls of the garage serve as the physical barrier against the demands of the outside world, allowing that delicate flow state to take root inside.
Its containers all the way down.
Yeah,
The garage is the larger container holding Aang safely, so Aang can safely hold the smaller containers for the seedlings.
exactly.
That is an incredible amount of insight pulled from such a simple rainy season chore.
It really is.
Let's briefly recap the journey here for you listening. We started with Aang facing the biological inevitability of those three overgrown plant species driven by the arrival of the rain.
Right, a task completely dictated by nature, ignoring our preference for neat schedules.
Yeah. And then we saw how a theoretical 20-minute potting job turned into a 4-hour deep clean, not because of distraction, but because the brain actually required the physical decluttering of old containers to free up the mental bandwidth necessary to focus on new growth.
Which revealed that the true neurological reward isn't found in consuming the final blooming product.
No tomatoes needed.
Exactly. The reward is in the tactile, anxiety-quieting flow state of the messy process itself.
And we broke down the recipe for that flow state.
Yeah.
The balance of engaging physical work, anchored by the sensory input of a cool breeze and the low-stakes safety of small talk.
Connection without demand.
All of it protected by the psychological boundary of a dedicated workspace, transforming a boring utilitarian garage into a vital mental sanctuary.
It fundamentally challenges us to audit where we are looking for satisfaction in our own routines.
It really does, and that leads to the provocative thought we want to leave you with today.
Okay.
We began this whole deep dive by talking about the sterile comfort of a checklist, the desire for a clean, immediate result.
The before and after.
Right, but Aang's journal proves the massive restorative power of ignoring the result and just sinking into the muddy middle.
The process.
So think about your own daily life. What is your personal equivalent of transplanting those seedlings? What is an everyday chore, a routine, or maybe a frustratingly inefficient hobby where you actually find yourself enjoying the unpolished, messy in-between steps far more than the polished, finished outcome?
That's a great question.
Find that process, claim your workspace, and let yourself spend 4 hours on a 20-minute task. You might find exactly the therapy you need.